Well, hello there, people. I've been doing a little bit of research because I'm a little bit fed up with this whole Ubuntu debacle. So, we're going to talk about why Ubuntu is ruling the world. Normally, I would put the links to these sites down below, but as you guys can see, I have tabs of sites with information on them. So it would basically just be, the description page would be like unmanageable. So I hope you guys can forgive me, and girls of course can forgive me, that I'm not putting the source material down there. You can see, I hope you can see up here where the sites are from and stuff like that, so it is possible to find them. But again, I really hope you can understand that I can't have all of this down below. What I will be doing is, I will have for each section up here, there will be a timestamp. When I do projects, Ubuntu teams, kernel, desktop, hardware, partners, and statistics. There will be timestamps for that down below, so if you don't, I recommend you watch the whole video. It will be a long-ass video. I will see if I can do my magic editing so it's not too long, because I can rant about this for hours. But I hope you will watch the whole video, because it all makes sense. If you're only watching like the projects and the Ubuntu teams and stuff like that, you may miss some stuff later on, and you may miss some stuff that I've talked on, already covered and stuff like that. But you can then use it if you watch the video to refresh or recollect, or if you want to use this video to talk to other people, be like, look at this with the kernel, or look at this with the desktop and stuff like that. You get what I'm saying here. Sorry for the description kind of thing. This will be a long ass video. I already have a cup of coffee to juice me up a little bit here. So again, please watch the video. Let's go into projects. Talking a little bit about what they're doing and stuff like that. So here, Canonical Contributor License Agreement. They kind of want you to sign away your kidney. But here, several upstream projects require all contributors to agree on the rules for inclusion of their code. We encourage Ubuntu members to support those when working with the upstream on contributing of patches back to those projects or direct contributions. There is a notion out there that a lot of people are in the belief that Ubuntu and the Ubuntu supporters are not giving back to upstream. This kind of tells a different picture here. So these are the open source project directories within Canonical. The following projects are covered by Canonical's contributor agreement. If you want to contribute to any of these projects below, please contact the project contact list in the third column over here, and then you have to agree to here. But these are the open source projects that Canonical kind of support, or what you will call it. So we have Bizarre. I will not go in and talk about what each of the project is. You can Google that yourself, but they have their multi-project name. If it's something I know a little bit about, I'll probably make a little bit of comment. But we all know what Bizarre is. Content authentication services. Canonical copyright open source project. Cloud Init. Crash and error reporting. Airport. Driver detection and loading. So this is must be for their, automatically proprietary driver tool and stuff like that. Terminite. I have no idea what that is. Juju. You probably know what Juju is. Juju dashboard. Landscape client, Launchpad, Lazar packets. I have no idea what that is. LightDM. This has actually really surprised me that they are this heavily supporting LightDM and not GDM. Loggerhead, Mental as a Service, or Metal as a Service, not Mental. Going Mental as a Service. Yeah, I'm crazy, and it's a service to you. You have to pay me. Micro K8, Mia Display Server, and a lot of people thought Mia was dead. It's not. Offspring, not the band, online accounts, and so on and so on. Oxidite, Snapcraft, Snapd, software installation and removal. So it's the software center, the software properties. So these are the packages that they are contributing back to and stuff like that. Software update manager, so the update manager, the update notifier, and the system image. Software properties, Storm, Ubuntu CD image building tool, Ubuntu Crash database, Ubuntu Live CD installer, Ubiquity, Ubuntu desktop installer, Ubuntu OpenStack, so they are working with OpenStack. Ubuntu Server Live Installer, Ubiquity or something like that. Uncomplicated Firewall, UFW. You probably are using that somewhere. Upstart Task and Service Management. Upstart Ubuntu App Launcher, so they are still working on Upstart apparently. We need a framework, virtual access assets, so that would be the wallpaper, Mono, Notify, Ubuntu theme, VMB builder, and Express. This is by far not all of the projects that they are working on as you will see when we go into the desktop, they're also working closely with GNOME and other upstream developers and stuff like that. But these are just the highlights that they make themselves. And here, they also do hackathon and stuff like that. Like they do work really closely with the community, which is also some of the kind of misconception that Ubuntu don't care about the community, they don't think about the community, they don't talk to the community, they don't listen to the community. Well, on the 4th and 5th of October 2021, this is the earliest one I could find, the web and design team ran a remote hackathon. The theme of it was to build tools that will make our life easier at Canonical. So you could be part of this here. So they did a Google Meet for WebBot, where is vacation calendar, Canonical partners picker, what else do they have there? A Magic 8-ball, vanilla VS Code extensions, time zone on Matmost, and then some last word. And also they are hiring, by the way. Another program that I think would be really, really important for you to understand that Canonical or Ubuntu is having deep fingers in, one of them is AppArmor. AppArmor is kind of, beside SE Linux, AppArmor is probably more used than SE Linux. But it's basically like a secure, like here, AppArmor is a Linux kernel security module. That's really important. Well, without Canonical, SUSE, and Novell, that would not have been here. We would not have it. You can thank Canonical and SUSE and Novell for this. This is just some of the programs that they do, some of the stuff that they do with projects, and this should give you an idea that they are working with people around them. They're not living in this little echo chamber and be like, fuck you, I don't want to talk to you and stuff like that. Ubuntu teams. How is the structure set up within Ubuntu? Like, what teams do they have, that are working on different stuff? And I kind of kept it a little bit, not server-oriented and enterprise-oriented, but a little bit more, like what we care about, the Ubuntu desktop or the Linux desktop. So Ubuntu development discussion mailing list is for high technical discussions and implementation details regarding current development of Ubuntu. Self-explanatory. Kernel team discussions. We'll go into the kernel later on. So, what they do with the kernel, how it works, what they should be doing, patches, fixes, bugs, and all that shit. Laptop development. I think this group is actually, if you look into it here, I can't find it, but I think they still have a laptop team. I could be wrong here. But laptop-specific development, and again, we'll go into, in hardware, what that could mean, and what that's mean. Ubuntu development, Ubuntu, educational Ubuntu, Ubuntu, Lubuntu, Ubuntu Modo, Mother of the Universe package maintainer, changes, Ubuntu DCT, Ubuntu mailing list for the Debian collaboration team. That's a hard word for me. Ubuntu Mobile. And there's other teams like Core Marketing and Art and Ubuntu Women and Ubuntu Translate. But this is all done with inside Ubuntu that you can be a part of. You can contribute to, you can talk to, you can get information. Go in here a little bit of Ubuntu developers from delegated teams. And talk a little bit about here. What I kind of want to talk about here is, again, at the current time, the following teams are considering delegated teams admitting their own members. Ubuntu Desktop, Mythbuntu, Kubuntu, Edubuntu, and Ubuntu kernel uploaders. And then we have the ones that are not. So yeah, they do have, like, Ubuntu is not just servers. Ubuntu is not just IoT devices. Ubuntu is not just, virtual machines. They actually do have, user-centric, end-user-centric, desktop-oriented teams within Ubuntu, or the Ubuntu structure, that are focusing on that. That's why I laugh a little bit when people say Ubuntu don't care about the desktop. Alone, these things here should tell you they differ. That's not the case. And later on, we'll go into that also, like in more detail. The kernel, there's always been a little bit of a, I don't know how true it is, but people always stated that Ubuntu never give back to the kernel, or they rarely do and stuff like that. And here I will say, well, they are actually looking for a kernel engineer. What do you need? What do you have to do? You have to you need to work on the Ubuntu Linux distribution. You have to optimize the Ubuntu solutions for key silicon and cloud partners. Developer platform such as Raspberry Pi and RISC-V, enabling Ubuntu on a wide range of embedded systems live patch services and so on, real-time and low latency system versus. So did anything with the kernel? Why are they hiring people to work with Ubuntu and the kernel for these kind of things? And again, go into it in here a little bit more in detail. The patch life cycle here. They're talking a little bit about this outline, the typical stage of a patch that should go through before it's including into the Ubuntu kernel. And it's actually really, really interesting how they do it. Patch is created and thoroughly tested. Find a bug on Launchpad. Attach the patch to Launchpad, or attach the patch to the Launchpad bug, and be sure that box ticks optional. You can talk to this guy here. Once the patch is ready, submit it to upstream, and we'll go into it here what that means. So before they include it into Ubuntu, you have to submit it to upstream. The patch will typically undergo a review by the upstream kernel developers and may receive additional comments on how to improve the patch. Be sure to make the suggested improvement and resubmit until it's finally accepted. At this point, it's also a good idea to add a reference in the Launchpad box to the thread of the patch posted upstream. So you have to, keep Launchpad updated with what's going on. 6. Patch is Patch is accepted by upstream, or accepted upstream. 7. Once upstream, the patch will automatically land in the Ubuntu kernel. If the patch should be cherry-picked immediately into the Ubuntu kernel from upstream, please refer to the submitting patch to the Ubuntu kernel. So there are caveats, there are situations where they, have to cherry-pick some updates, some fixes, and put it into the Ubuntu kernel. What this should tell you is that most kernel performances and kernel tweaks that Ubuntu is doing to the kernel, beside of course adding hardware and stuff like that, but I think we'll go into that with modules and stuff like that. I don't know if I go into that because, again, I'm trying to keep this short. But if there's a problem with the kernel, Ubuntu warned you, and they do them themselves, want it to be in the upstream kernel. So they are submitting it to the upstream kernel. And when the good old Linus approve it, it will then automatically be tripled into the Ubuntu kernel. It's not like a lot of people think that Ubuntu do everything for themselves first, and then they push it out, and then if they want to accept it, it's up to them. Happens sometimes if it's necessary, but this here should tell you that they prioritize that it gets into the official upstream kernel first, because then it's validated by Linus and his team. Get what I'm saying here? Submitting an upstream patch, and they're explaining here what you could do here. You have to go to gitkernel.org and all of these kind of things here. And they also say here, if a patch will benefit the entire kernel community as a whole, it should go upstream first. Again, they prioritize that patches is being done upstream and not just for Ubuntu, if it can be done. And here they are talking about the Ubuntu kernel. With every Ubuntu release, we attempt to remain as true to upstream Linux kernel as possible. During every release of the UDS, the Ubuntu kernel team meets to discuss the likely upstream kernel version to base the release on. So I think right now it's 5.15 or something like that. For example, the upstream Linux kernel version 3.2 was chosen for Pangolin 12.04 LTS release. This forms the base version for the life of that release. However, there are invertibly patches which we carry on top of the upstream Linux kernel, which differentiates the Ubuntu kernel from upstream Linux kernel. So they take patches and fixes from newer kernels and backport them or add them into, the older kernel. Many changes will come from fixes for reported issues, and and the associated Launchpad bug will be referred via the bug link in the commit and blah blah blah. You get here, and now they explain here Ubuntu packaging patches, Ubuntu configuration patches, Ubuntu cherry pick patches, Ubuntu development continues even after the Ubuntu kernel has locked and a chosen upstream version. So let's try again. Ubuntu development continues even after the Ubuntu kernel has locked on a chosen upstream version. It is often discovered that a patch which resolved an issue was applied upstream. So upstream, after they locked on, let's say 5.15 in this case that we're on right now, 5.18 may have a patch for a bug. But after the version which has been chosen for the Ubuntu kernel, in this scenario, the upstream patch is cherry-picked. So that means that if there is a patch or a bug fix or anything like that in 5.18, they cherry-pick it, plop, and they put it into the 5.15, boop. So it's basically backporting. So a lot of people, they think, oh, I'm only using 5.15. Yeah, but you could still be benefiting a lot from, fixes and added hardware capability and stuff like that are in the newer kernels, because they can do these cherry picking, some kind of backporting, call it what you will. And the same with driver patches and source patches. You get my idea. I don't want to drag this out to be a 1,000-minute fucking video. What they basically are saying here is with the cherry picking, which I found was really, really interesting, or what you should take away from this kernel segment here, is that they are working with the kernel, upstream kernel. They want you to work with the upstream kernel. They want you to submit fixes to the upstream kernel. And they want them to be approved by the upstream kernel first, before they get into Ubuntu. Sometimes that can happen again if it's a massive critical bug, and there's different scenarios where they may implement it in Ubuntu first and then upstream approve it later on. And again, a lot of people like, oh, Ubuntu's using older kernels. Well, with the cherry picking, as they call it here, if something in a newer version of the kernel is fixing a problem, a bug, or adding capabilities like hardware capabilities, you can backport it, cherry pick it, or take that fix out of the existing upstream kernel and plop it into the locked version that Ubuntu is using, in this case 5.15. So basically you are running 5.15 plus the bug fixes and added hardware support from 5.18. I know it's really complicated and fucking frustrated. Why are they not just updating the kernel? Well, they don't really have to. And why are they doing it? Well, instead of changing all of the, a lot of code within the kernel, they're only changing the code that are correlated with the bug fix or the added hardware support. So instead of changing, let's say, 10,000 lines of code by updating the kernel, they're only changing 10 lines of code. It's way more stable, way more manageable, potentially incorporate less bugs, and so on and so on and so on. It's in the name of stability. It's the name of in predictability. Words. Get something to drink now, because we're going over to the desktop. Let's look at the good old desktop. Here we have a meeting with the desktop team in Debian. I can't fucking pronounce that. So yeah, there is a desktop team. What is the desktop team doing? Like we looked at it up here later on here with the teams. They are focusing on making Ubuntu great for the desktop, meaning working with GNOME and what makes sense for the desktop and all that thing. They have meetings. This one here, this YouTube video is from July the 30th, 2021. They had some this year also. Here, a little bit about Ubuntu's Ubuntu desktop team developers are a collective responsible for the maintaining of packages in the Ubuntu desktop packages sets by being able to commit to packaging branches and upload packages updates to Ubuntu. So here you can see here you can apply for it and if you want to do that, and there are different mailing lists you can go on to and whatnot. Then we have here, this is the mailing list where they discuss stuff for the Ubuntu desktop. Desktop team update, Monday the 18th of July. Hey everyone, below you'll find the updates for the Ubuntu desktop team for the last week. If you're interested in discussing the topic, please start a thread. And then in the desktop area discussion, last week's notes are here. So here, now they're going in to talk about working on making a no weather app Snap. I know you guys hate snaps, but hey, this is a desktop-oriented thing. I don't think servers care that much about a GNOME weather app. Get more snaps. Chromium Snap, preparing new upstream versions updates for Edge, beta, and stable channel for the Chromium Snap here. This one may interest you. Upload the 33 alpha versions of libavidia to Debian Unstable and Ubuntu 22.10. So, again, a lot of people also say that Ubuntu don't contribute back to Debian. Again, here they do. Uploaded GNOME character 43 alpha featuring the new NVIDIA About Windows and support for emoji sequences and modifiers. That looks a lot like they are working with the GNOME developers or submitting to GNOME. And this, again, this is not server thing. I don't think the enterprise world care about your little fucking eggplant emoji. More SRU work intended for the Ubuntu 22.04.1 LTS, including norm shell stack 42.3 stack. Updating my primary computer to... Okay. Updating my primary computer to 22.10 for testing purposes, I guess. Ready for the official state of DEFCON in Kosovo tomorrow. And then if you go down here, we can see Monday in... Did I? Oh, that's suggested topics. Sorry. Okay, gotcha. But let's look at the Monday, the 11th. I can't speak. SRU Ubuntu Advanced Desktop Daemon to 2204 LTS. Continue to try and get speed test working or spread test working with launching apps for other snaps. Confirming this feature works in virtual machine. Again, desktop-oriented stuff for us, the desktop. Ubuntu don't care about the desktop. I'm just reading you what the fuck they are doing. Updated system D packages with core desktop PPA. Proposed core desktop system D changes to Kinetic. Planning of Flutter information at Ubuntu Summit. Firefox, preparing a new Firefox. Reviewing Alexander's pull request for debug symbols on night. Cherry pick an upstream patch for startup optimization with LAN pack into the stable beta branch. So they are taking a feature that's been fixed in Firefox current version and trying to implement it in their version. Thunderbird updated. You get the idea here. Active Directory, that's a little bit server related. Debian updates for GNOME. Maps calculator, remote desktop. Merge Orca and sync Calligra. Here, discover the process on the Chromium app, snaps. Discovered that machines with NVIDIA GPUs don't get accelerated video encoding. That's a big desktop-oriented thing. Ubuntu really don't care about the desktop. And if you go in and read about this, and this is why it irritates me that people don't do the research. If you go and look at the desktop team here, what they are doing, and other, you can hear known issues with Firefox snaps and stuff like go into their mailing list and their forums and stuff like that. They are spending so many resources on making Ubuntu and Ubuntu-related distributions and even upstream projects good for the desktop. Here, you want to hear what they're working on talking about in video form. They have a YouTube page. The latest one is 3 weeks old. Ubuntu team in Deba, what the fuck is called, Here, how Ubuntu helped make GNOME shell faster and why they continue the work. Granted, this is from 2019, but I don't think they stopped, okay? It's a fair assumption to say that they have not stopped. How Ubuntu helped make GNOME shell faster. Ubuntu don't care about the desktop. Why would they then make, GNOME faster if they don't care about the desktop? Again here, Ubuntu desktop GNOME plans for the incoming LTS release. This is from the one that we are running right now. Look at all of the things that they are talking about here. Desktop related. Desktop related. Ubuntu don't care about the desktop. Ubuntu's giving the desktop a middle finger. Why would they spend all of this effort in then making the desktop better for you? Again here, Ubuntu developer worked on reducing GNOME consumption. This is from 2018. Why would they do this if they don't care about the desktop? You can kind of understand why I'm getting frustrated when I hear all of these people talking out of their ass about Ubuntu have forgotten about the desktop. They don't care about the desktop. They only thing they care about is servers. Of course, it may be their main focus, but saying that they're not caring about the desktop and they are laughing at us and throwing everything away, they're not doing anything for the Linux desktop or the Linux desktop community. Like, have you spent just 10 minutes looking into this shit, or did you just wake up and had a fucking fart and then sniff your own fart and be like, oh, I have an idea? Like, it's irritating. Take a sip of something to drink and we will go into hardware. Cheers. Ubuntu or Canonical spent a lot of effort, money, time, dedication to lift heavy weights. No, to work with hardware vendors. To make sure that your hardware that you have right now is working with Linux. And all of this is benefiting any Linux distribution. It's not just Ubuntu. Like they said here, if they have patches, fixes, and stuff like that, there could be hardware patches, hardware fixes. They want it to be submitted to the upstream kernel, and they rarely put it into their own kernel until it's being approved by Linus. So by that nature, a lot of the support we have for Linux on hardware, we could easily say is correlated with all of the hard work that Ubuntu is doing. Of course, Red Hat do this also, SUSE do this also, but Ubuntu or Canonical is one of the big ones also. Like they are helping you running Linux on your hardware right now. And they still don't care about the desktop, they still don't care about Linux. They're just only caring about servers, and we will go into what I mean about that with laptops and desktop here. What is the certified hardware? Well, certified hardware, machines you can trust with Ubuntu. Here you can search on what hardware it is. Better yet, I have found, really easy, all the certified desktops, all 282 desktops. What does this mean? This means that Dell and HP and Lenovo have worked with Ubuntu to make, and Raspberry Pi Foundation, they have all worked with Ubuntu to make sure that their things work, and it's been tested by Ubuntu. Let's go back up again. So here again, I forgot to say this. Ubuntu Certified is a program where OEMs submit systems to Canonical's testing facility, where the certification testing validation is performed by Canonical engineers. So Canonical have a testing facility where they test all of these desktops to make sure they work. So again, like I said, the companies are working with Ubuntu to make sure that it works, that then you're benefiting from running Fedora, benefiting from running Arch, Gentoo, because they're submitting this back into the kernel. But wait, laptops. 555 certified laptops running Ubuntu that has been submitted and tested by, or not submitted, but have been tested by Canonical's testing facility. Dell, HP, Lenovo, that's kinda it. Like, that's a lot of fucking laptops that you have to test to make sure Ubuntu run on, that have been tested by Canonical. Do Red Hat do this for the desktop? Do SUSE do this for the desktop? I have not looked into it. They may do, but I have not looked into it. I'm asking you right now. Do SUSE have a testing facility? Do Red Hat have... I probably think Red Hat should have a testing facility. Or is there something wrong? But yeah, do they have a testing facility where they are not only testing servers, but also desktops and laptops? I don't know. It could be fun to look at. Next subject. Get some more to drink. And we will go into really briefly part. Let's look at the good old partnership. Why do I have this here? Well, right now there's 106 partners with Ubuntu. What does that mean? Just the same as with hardware. That they are working closely with Ubuntu to make sure that their things works with Ubuntu. AMD Links, or Xilinx, or what the fuck it's called, is an inventor of adaptive system on the chips. I think it is, yeah. Asus, AMD, Amazon Web Services, ARM, Aquarian is Atos, Blender. I think Ubuntu is the only officially supported distribution by Blender. So that means that, in theory, you should be getting updates for Blender on Ubuntu faster and more reliable, and that they are working closely with Ubuntu to make sure that Blender run best or as good as it can on Ubuntu. That's a really big fucking stamp of approval and confidence boost for Ubuntu, if you ask me. But you get the idea here. I know OpenSUSE is really good at showing their partners, and same with Red Hat. But look at how many partners Ubuntu have. Would Ubuntu have all of these partners if it was pointless and nobody wants to use it and blah, 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 blah. Now we're going into what I think would surprise a lot of you. We're going into talk about stats, and this is boring. But it's probably the most important things, because now we are starting to set numbers on what the community is saying about Ubuntu. Is Ubuntu irrelevant? Is Ubuntu pointless? Do nobody want to use Ubuntu anymore? Is Ubuntu on a massive decline, and so on and so on? We can go in right now and look at those stats. How accurate they are, take them with a grain of salt, okay? That's why I have a lot of stat pages. Ubuntu user statistics, the only one I could find or easily find was from 1804. How many opted into telemetry? 66%. Real versus virtual machines, you probably have seen this one here. Clean installs and upgrades. Where are Ubuntu users? Mostly in the Americas, apparently. What language are they using? Desktop specs. AMD is really high up there. BIOS versus UEFI. Oh, that's in VirtualBox and physical, I guess. Graphics that they use and all. You've seen this before, how many gigabytes of RAM they have, you know, size of the hard drive and blah, 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 blah. This has been covered to death. Let's go in here from Bitwith. Ubuntu user statistics. I found this really interesting. This is all the way from 2011 up till last month, or the month before that, where you can see here, get a list of 11 million blah 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 websites using Ubuntu, which include local location information, hosting data, connect data, and there's over 4 million currently live website and additional over 2 million domains that redirect the sites on this list. To this list, sorry. Again, here you can read this here yourself. And I opened up United States and Germany, not Germany, United Kingdom over here. But as you can see here, it goes up, it stagnates, it goes down, it stagnates, it goes up, it stagnates, it goes down, stagnates, it goes up, it goes down, it goes up, stagnates, it goes down, stagnates, it goes a little bit up, stagnates, go up, stagnates, go down, stagnates. This is normal with everything. Everything goes like this. Is this an indication of a decline? If you look at the averages, it's actually an increase. And this is of all of the internet. If we then do the top 1 million, you can see here it's kind of on a steady climb. We do have a little bit of a fall off here. But this is websites, not desktops. So don't say this, oh my god, then it's on the desktop, it's on the decline. No, this is website. This is the enterprise. Go into things other in later on in statistics. Let's look at top 100k. Again, you see it's kind of the same trend. Up, 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 up. We have a little bit of a decline here. Top 10k. Again, up, decline. No, it's actually rising a little bit now. Again, this is servers. We can't really use this as data for the desktop, but it's really interesting to see anyway that goes a little bit like this. You know, nothing is steady, but if you look at it overall, Ubuntu has risen. And this is the same with stock market and anything. There will be fluctuations, there will be dips, sometimes large dips, and then spikes again. What we don't want to see is, let's just do this here, that it goes from up here to down here in like a month or 6 months. That's not what we want to see. Or, you know, these massive spikes. So this one here, I would say that's a problem. You know, they went from up here and down here in a couple of years. Yeah, I will say that's a problem. These kind of small fluctuations in the last 3 years, you know, not that big of a deal if you ask me. Let's go in here. Websites using Ubuntu in the United States, and they download a list of over 2 million, blah, 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 blah. And you can see here, I think this is like location, sales revenue, tech spec, social. I think this is how many is connected to it, how many employees they have and stuff like that. So I think the top dog must be Variety. Yeah, Variety. You get what I'm saying here. It's a little bit fun thing to say, you know, the traffic, how many employees they have, socials and blah. I think that's social media accounts over how many social they have here. I didn't even know we could click on this one here. Oh, this is just company statistics. It's really interesting. Let's look at the United Kingdom. You see here, Vogue. Is there anyone that everyone probably know? Autocar.co.uk. You get what I'm saying here. Let's look at a little bit more statistics here. Use statistics for Ubuntu for websites. Ubuntu is used by 12.6% of all websites whose operating systems were known. We don't know about the unknown, and we can't say the unknown is also Ubuntu. Because the unknown, because you don't know what they are, you have to split them in 3 equal size pieces. You can't give one operating system a preference treatment. It's not how it works. So if you take all the unknowns should be equally shared with these, with Ubuntu and Linux mean any other Linux distribution. and Unix. How to read the diagram. Ubuntu or Unix is used by 81% of all websites. Ubuntu is used by 12.6% of all websites. And then you can see here, this diagram shows the historical trend in percentages of websites using Ubuntu. And you can see here that, yes, there's a little bit of a decline, and this is from the last couple of months. Yeah, it's from July 21 to July now, I guess. And you can see there is a small little decline here, and then it's starting to even out. I will not call this like a, oh my god, now we have to be worried and all of that fucking shit. Like, it's almost minute. Market position. Used by low traffic site, used by high traffic site, used by fewer site, used by many site. See where they are here. And here they're talking about some of the popular sites using Ubuntu. Here's another one. Ubuntu. Top industry verticals. Science and education, computer, adult industry. Art and entertainment, others. Know how popular is Ubuntu within them. Here we can compare them with other distributions. I've done that here with the Red Hat and Debian. Top websites using Ubuntu, archive.org, independent.uk, Flickr, and stuff like that. Geography. Leading countries, so we have United States, Russia, Germany, India, United Kingdom, France, Italy. And this is why when you're looking at statistics, you have to look at as many statistics as possible. So let's say you wanted to figure out how many servers are running Ubuntu. You can't just find one and then say that's it. Look at 10. The more you look at, the better, because then you take the average of what they are saying. Is every statistics site that you look at that is telling that are taking statistics from Ubuntu, is every one of them saying that United States is the country that are mostly using Ubuntu? Then you can probably say that's the case. But if one site say it's United States, another site say it's Germany, and then the third one say it's France, and the fourth one says Brazil, then you have to look at as many statistics sites as you can and say, on average, where do United States lie? On average, where do Brazil and stuff like that lie? That's why I have a little bit of a problem when people are just using one site, because we can all find a statistics site that backs up our theory. The trick is to look at as many statistics sites as possible to validate them. You know, basically what you're doing is you're validating the statistics sites with each other. Is this statistics site saying the same as this statistics site? Or is it not? If they are saying the same, and the more statistics site you're looking at, they are more or less say like 90% or 95% of the time they're giving you the same data. It's a good conclusion to say that probably is the correct data. You probably looked at this here right now and be like, oh my god, Ubuntu is on a 64% decline, for websites. Again, this is not desktops, this is website. I couldn't find anything for desktops. Well, it's the last month. Is 0.6% in a decline on the desktop that bad? Well, is it? Let's look at the Ubuntu versus Red Hat. You could draw Fedora within Red Hat here. I don't know if they are. So here we have like the king is Ubuntu. Red Hat is also in a decline the last 30 days, just like Ubuntu is. We could again debate that Ubuntu is in a little bit steeper decline. Again, let fair be fair, because if you look here, you know, we have a massive decline here, and then it kind of evened out a little bit with Red Hat and not so much with Ubuntu here. But on this website's registered database, look at how many sites are using Ubuntu versus Red Hat. It's kind of mind-boggling, right? Top 10k sites, Ubuntu. Top 100k sites, Ubuntu. Top 1 million site, Ubuntu. The entire web, Ubuntu. Here, website categories. Geography. So, yeah, Ubuntu on the server is on a decline, spent it the last 6 months. So have Red Hat. What about good old Debian? Ooh, this is a little bit more close. And also, if you look at the decline statistic here, it's also closer. And we have to remember, Ubuntu is not Red Hat. I have a video in either coming or already is out there where I explain why Ubuntu is not Red Hat. Watch that one. But at least Debian have way more websites than Red Hat had. Red Hat was only like 22,000 or 22,500. Here we are talking 100,000, approximately close to 50% of what Ubuntu have. But let's look here. Top 10K, Ubuntu's winning massively. Top 100K, Ubuntu's winning massively. Top 1 million, Ubuntu's winning massively. The entire web, Ubuntu's winning massively. And then education, Ubuntu's still winning massively. Funny enough, there are some, here, Debian is actually higher in France. What these statistics here is showing you. Let's do this one here. What these statistics here are showing you is, if we have to correlate this to the desktop, let's say that the trend on the server market is also the trend on the desktop. Well, that means that every distribution is on a decline. At least the big ones, Red Hat, Fedora, SUSE, OpenSUSE, Ubuntu, Debian, and so on and so on. They are all going on a decline the last 30 days. Granted, that's only 30 days. I don't know, we can't seem to see, a historical trend like we did over here. And there are some that indicate, like this one here, that Ubuntu may be on a 1% decline over a year, which is kind of how the market works, You never stay at the same percentage all the time. The Ubuntu desktop market share, like if you look at the Ubuntu desktop, it fluctuates between 1 to 2% depending on what fucking statistics you're looking at. And when you're looking at it, in February it can be 2%, in March it can be 0.5%, in October it can be 1.5%. So you could argue that this is also somewhat correlated with Ubuntu on the desktop. What this shows you is, or should tell you, is that not only is Ubuntu ruling the fucking server market, even though they are going down like any other Linux distribution is right now, for some reason or another, no idea why. Not only is Ubuntu massively more represented in the server market, if you're looking at all of these things going on the desktop market, it's not a far-fetched conclusion to say that it's also massively overrepresented in the desktop market. I did find statistics from Ubuntu, but they were from like before 2015 or something like that. And at that point, Ubuntu had like 40-something million installs, and Fedora only had 18. Not the case today. Both of them have exploded massively since 2015. So I didn't want to include that in there as, look, I found these statistics because they're too old. They're just too old. What we can do is that we can look at sites that register reliably operating systems, and that is sadly servers. So we can kind of use the server market and loosely base our conclusion onto the desktop market. Because what people use at work, they tend to also use at home. If you're a mechanic, if you see someone working at a Ford dealership, there is a high possibility that the mechanic is also driving old beat-up Ford cars. Because that's what they work with, that's what they know, they probably got them way fucking cheap. It's a common trend that the thing that people are using at work, they are also using at home. But now we're talking the professional world, we're not talking desktop users. I will not sit here and say that Ubuntu is on an increase or decline on the home desktop market. I will not sit here and say that any Linux distribution is in an increase or decrease on the desktop market, because we don't have reliable data saying that. We can only look at the server market. What I'm trying to say with this video here is that if this makes Ubuntu pointless, if this makes Ubuntu not caring about the desktop, because look, all of these statistics here is what's going on the server market, the corporate world. All of this here is information about what's going on the home front. So they are doing a shit ton of work here on the corporate world and a shit ton of work here on all of these home desktop areas here. How many other distributions is doing that? I know for a fact that SUSE is not doing that much for the desktop. They are smaller than Ubuntu, of course. They have less money than Ubuntu, but they are heavily focused on the corporate world and power users and IT professionals. Red Hat is kind of doing the same. I know a lot of people say that Fedora is the new Ubuntu, but look at it like this. Fedora is not a home desktop distribution. What is it called? Fedora Workstation. A workstation is not a desktop computer. It is a professional tool. It's a computer purpose-built to do workloads. But there is this little thing that a lot of times, what is really great for workstations is really great for power users. We kind of want the same. We want a lot of RAM, a lot of stability, a lot of performance. So we are happy using them. Because we are also doing virtual machines, and we are doing all of those kind of things that the average consumer is not doing. Like the average computer user, even the average Linux user have never booted up a virtual machine. So they don't need a workstation. They need a Ubuntu desktop or a Mint desktop or something like that. So saying that Fedora is a desktop operating system and Ubuntu is not is kind of a little bit like, really, if you look at all of the things that they are doing here. And I know for a fact that Fedora is doing a lot of things for the desktop also. They also have desktop teams or equivalents to that and stuff like that. I'm not saying that they don't. I'm just saying that if you call Ubuntu pointless and that Ubuntu is going out of the limelight and Ubuntu is becoming irrelevant, what about all of the other systems that are doing way less for the desktop than Canonical is doing and Ubuntu is doing? They should be even more fucking pointless. Here, when was the last time you heard about Fedora working closely with the GNOME developers to fix performance issues and bugs and stuff like that? Have they done it? Probably. I don't deny that. But we don't hear about it. So we can't statistically say that that's happening. We can't factually say that's happened until we have it on paper. And right now we're not looking into Fedora, we're looking into Ubuntu. Ubuntu is more relevant than it have ever been. Ubuntu is focusing massively on the consumer desktop. You just have to look for it. Ubuntu is working a lot with upstream projects to make sure that not only Ubuntu works great with your hardware and your software, but other Linux distributions are doing it also in form of submitting their fixes and bug fixes and improvements to upstream. And putting a priority on that it should be submitted and accepted by upstream first. So it benefits Linux in general and not just Ubuntu. Again, I don't know how SUSE do this. I don't know how Fedora do this. They could be doing the same thing. I don't know. We are looking at Ubuntu right now. So that means that if you're running any other distribution right now, you are more than likely benefiting for work that Ubuntu is doing right now. No matter what distribution you're running. Arch, whatever. I would say Ubuntu is more relevant than it have ever been. I would say Ubuntu is still ruling the world. And Ubuntu is still one of the few Linux companies that are doing the most for Linux. SUSE, OpenSUSE, Fedora, Red Hat, and Canonical. Ubuntu. I don't put Debian in there because Debian is more like an organization than a company. You get what I'm saying here. See you all later. Bye bye.